All right, so let's dive into something kind of spooky, but like also strangely familiar.
Okay.
The whole selling your soul to the devil thing.
Right.
We've all heard the phrase. Who hasn't?
Yeah.
But have you ever like actually stopped and thought about like what it really means?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So for this deep dive, you guys sent us this article from the Spiritual Seek.
Okay.
And it digs into like the whole history and the meaning of this whole concept. Even has like a morality quiz at the end.
Oh, wow.
I'm kind of dreading that, to be honest.
Yeah.
But before we like get to that, let's just unpack the whole soul selling thing.
Sure.
What do you think? Is this just a scary story?
Yeah.
Or there's something deeper going on here?
It's a fascinating question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of like a soul bargain, it appears, across cultures and time periods.
Okay.
Like we see it in ancient myths and in religious texts, literature, even modern pop culture.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Yeah, it really suggests it might be tapping into something like a universal human anxiety.
Right.
Something about ambition,
Yeah.
temptation, and then those potential costs of success.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, the article jumps right into the historical roots, you know.
Yeah.
Starting with the story of Job from the Bible.
Right.
I remember reading that in school. I was like, wow, this poor guy.
Yeah, it's
But like, what's the significance of this kind of story appearing in religious texts?
You're right. It's heavy stuff. But
Yeah.
these stories, they often function as like morality tales, you know. They're exploring the limits of like human resilience in the face of hardship,
Okay.
temptation.
Yeah.
The devil figure often embodies those darker impulses that we all struggle with.
Right.
Greed, envy, pride.
Oh, yeah. All the good stuff.
Yeah. Job's story becomes like a cautionary tale, reminding us that even the most righteous among us can be tempted
Yeah.
to compromise our values when faced with unimaginable suffering.
So it's less about a literal devil, you're saying,
Right.
and more about those internal struggles we all face.
So it's all
The moments where we're tempted to like take the easy way out,
Yeah.
even if it means like compromising our integrity.
And as this idea evolved, we see it reflected in literature, often with more nuance and complexity.
Okay.
Take Dr. Faustus, for example, that classic play about a scholar who makes a pact with the devil.
Oh, yeah. Dr. Faustus.
Yeah.
Wait, was this the face that launched 1,000 ships?
That's the one.
That's so good.
Yeah.
But wasn't there more than one version of that story?
There are actually several.
Oh, wow.
But the two most famous are by Christopher Marlowe
Okay.
and Johann Wolfgang von Goethe.
So Marlowe's Dr. Faustus.
Yeah. So Marlowe's is a tragedy.
Okay.
He succumbs to temptation,
Oh.
squanders his power on cheap thrills, and ultimately faces eternal damnation.
Woof.
Yeah. But Goethe reimagines the story and offers a more hopeful perspective. His Faust, while still flawed, uses his knowledge to actually benefit humanity
Oh, wow.
and eventually finds redemption.
Hold on. So one version ends in like fiery damnation.
Right.
And the other one ends in redemption.
Totally.
That's a big shift.
It's a fascinating evolution, isn't it?
Yeah. What do you make of that?
It reflects those changing cultural attitudes
Okay.
toward ambition and the possibility of forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Marlowe's Faustus was written during a time of like intense religious fervor,
Right.
where the consequences of sin were seen as absolute.
Mm-hmm.
But Goethe, writing in the 18th century during the Enlightenment,
Right.
offered a more nuanced view of human nature, suggesting that even those who stray from the path can find their way back.
That's a pretty optimistic take.
Yeah.
So we've got these like classic literary examples.
Right.
But the article also mentions the legend of the blues man Robert Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
This one always gives me chills.
Yeah.
The story goes that he like met the devil at a crossroads,
Uh-huh.
traded his soul for incredible musical talent.
Right.
Does this show how the whole selling your soul idea extends beyond just religious or literary context?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Robert Johnson legend speaks to that deep-seated fear that extraordinary talent or success might come at a hidden price.
Right.
And that crossroads motif itself is so powerful.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's steeped in folklore, representing like a point of decision, a fork in the road where you have to choose one path over another,
Right.
often involving sacrifice.
And that sacrifice often involves our integrity.
Often. Yeah.
Makes you wonder if we all have those crossroads moments in life
Yeah.
where we're tempted to take shortcuts,
Right.
even if it means compromising our values.
It really does make you think.
Yeah. But is this really about a literal, like, transaction
Yeah.
with the devil? Or is there, like, a deeper, more symbolic meaning here.
Well, that's where things get really interesting. The article digs into the spiritual significance of this idea, you know. It suggests that selling your soul isn't necessarily about an actual, like, contract with a horned figure in the shadows.
Right.
It's more about, like, the struggle between our desire for meaning and purpose and, like, the consequences of the choices we make in pursuing them.
So it's more about those inner demons we wrestle with.
Yeah.
Those choices that might seem appealing in the moment,
Right.
but could, like, lead us down a path that we might regret.
Precisely. The soul, in this context, represents, like, our essence, our values, our integrity. Selling your soul becomes like a metaphor for compromising those core parts of ourselves, often in pursuit of things that, like, ultimately leave us feeling empty or unfulfilled.
I can see that we chase after success, wealth, or power,
Right.
thinking those things will bring happiness.
Yeah.
But sometimes they come at a cost.
They do.
This reminds me of something the article mentioned, conflict theory. It talked about that feeling of being torn between what we want and what society expects of us. Could that pressure lead someone to make a deal in their own mind, even if there's no actual devil involved?
It's a really compelling point.
Yeah.
Think about it. We're constantly bombarded with messages about what makes a successful life.
Right.
Buy this, achievable a day, look like this.
Oh, yeah. All the time.
Yeah. And it's easy to internalize those messages and start feeling like we don't measure up.
Yeah.
And that internal conflict can be so powerful. It pushes people to make compromises they wouldn't otherwise consider.
So it's like we're making these deals with ourselves.
Yes.
Telling ourselves it's okay to bend the rules a little bit.
Yeah.
To cut corners as long as we achieve that goal.
Exactly. And that's where the whole idea of cognitive dissonance comes into play.
Oh, yeah. What is that again?
It's that psychological mechanism where we justify our actions to reduce that inner conflict. Even if it means ignoring ethical implications or downplaying the potential consequences.
Okay. So, like, imagine someone who dreams of being a famous musician. They might convince themselves that it's okay to, like, steal a melody or sabotage a rival.
Right.
Because, hey, everybody does it right.
All right. Everybody's doing it.
Cutthroat music industry.
That's a perfect example. They're rationalizing their behavior. To alleviate the guilt or discomfort they might otherwise feel.
Right.
The desire for success becomes so consuming that it overrides their moral compass.
And that brings us to the slightly more sensational, shall we say, side of this whole selling your soul idea. The article touches on those conspiracy theories about powerful figures making deals with the dark forces to reach the top. I gotta admit, I'm a sucker for a good conspiracy theory. But come on, politicians and celebrities making deals with the devil, really?
I get the skepticism, but I think it's worth considering why these theories are so persistent, even in the absence of evidence. They tap into that deep-seated mistrust of authority and that suspicion that some success is achieved through morally questionable means.
I guess there's a part of us that just wants to believe that anyone who achieves extraordinary wealth, power, or fame must have made some kind of Faustian bargain. It's easier than accepting that maybe they just got lucky. Or worked harder than everyone else.
Totally. There's definitely an element of that. Plays into that primal fear of unseen forces influencing the world around us, a fear that things aren't as random or fair as we'd like to believe.
But even if we don't, like, buy into the literal devil-worshipping scenario, the concept still makes you think about the compromises people make in real life, right?
Absolutely.
The lines they're willing to cross to reach their ambitions.
Whether it's a politician accepting bribes to further their career, a CEO cutting ethical corners to boost profits, or even just someone lying on their resume to get a job they're not qualified for. These actions can all be seen as forms of selling your soul. In a metaphorical sense.
It's like we all have a price.
The
question is, what's yours?
What are you willing to sacrifice to get what you want?
Yeah, that's a big one.
It's a powerful question. And one that each of us has to grapple with. There's a fine line between ambition and ruthlessness. Between pursuing your dreams and compromising your values.
And this is where that morality quiz at the end of the article comes in, right? It's all about those, like, tough choices, you know, those gray areas where the right path isn't always so clear.
That quiz is a brilliant way to bring this whole discussion back to the listener on a personal level.
Yeah.
It asks questions like, would you lie on a job application to get your dream position?
Ooh.
Or would you betray a friend to advance your career?
It's a tough one.
Yeah. These scenarios force us to really examine our values, consider where our boundaries lie.
You know, I was actually kind of nervous to look at those questions.
Yeah.
It's easy to judge other people's choices.
Right.
But when you're faced with those situations yourself, it really makes you think.
It's true. It's easy to say, oh, I would never do that.
Right.
But when you're faced with real-life pressures, temptations, opportunities, sometimes those lines can get blurred.
So how do we navigate those tricky situations? How do we make sure we're not selling our souls without even realizing it?
I think it starts with being honest with ourselves about our values, our priorities. What are those non-negotiables, those lines we absolutely won't cross no matter what?
It's about defining success on your own terms, right?
Exactly.
Not just chasing after what society tells you to value.
Right, because maybe that corner office or that fancy car isn't worth sacrificing your integrity or your peace of mind.
And sometimes the most fulfilling path involves taking the road less traveled even if it means making sacrifices or facing setbacks along the way.
Right. It's about focusing on the journey, not just the destination, making choices that align with your authentic self.
So maybe the real lesson here isn't about avoiding deals with literal devils and pitchforks.
Right.
It's about recognizing those subtler deals we make with ourselves every day.
Yes.
Those compromises that might seem small in the moment, but can gradually erode our values and our sense of self.
That's a powerful insight. It's about being mindful of those seemingly insignificant choices.
Okay.
Those little white lies, those shortcuts we take.
Right.
Because they can have a cumulative effect on who we become.
Wow. I think we've officially gone from spooky campfire stories to some serious life lessons.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
And I hope my listener will walk away from this deep dive, not with a fear of the supernatural, but with a heightened awareness of their own inner compass.
Yes. It's about recognizing those crossroads moments in our own lives and making choices that we can live with, choices that lead us toward a fulfilling and meaningful life.
Right.
Whatever that looks like for each of us.
And on that note, dear listener, we leave you with this question to ponder.
Okay.
What compromises, if any, are you willing to make to achieve your goals?
Ooh.
And what price might those compromises ultimately demand?
Food for thought, right? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
And until next time, stay curious and stay true to yourselves.